이제 저는 22대 대한민국 대통령 선거 출마를 선언합니다.
Jun Ji-hyun returns to the screen after many years. However, she becomes a widow right at the very beginning of the story. She originally wanted to investigate the murderer who shot her husband. Little did she know that this incident was involved with the Korean Peninsula War. To solve the mystery, and also to prevent the flames of war from engulfing the Korean Peninsula, she decides to run for the president of South Korea, and whether she can overcome hardships and obstacles to be elected. Without further ado, the story begins. The South Korean presidential candidate is speaking on the stage, while his wife Munju supports him silently from behind, but in the next second, Munju fell in a pool of blood and gradually lost her breath. Right after that, the presidential candidate suddenly woke up from his dream, still trembling with fear. He looked beside him and realized his wife had gone out to exercise again. The morning news was being broadcast at this time. The United States stepped forward and said it would respond to the tough words North Korea had directed at them. They believe that North Korea has been very aggressive recently and is deploying intercontinental ballistic missiles capable of striking the US mainland. The United States will not choose to remain silent. It stated that if North Korea intends to provoke them with nuclear weapons, they will have to meet force with force. Just at this moment, Munju thought of the conversation she had with her husband not long ago. At that time, she had returned home after exercising, and asked her husband why he had sent someone to secretly follow her. Her husband said he was worried about her safety, because he was currently in the eye of the storm. It would be very easy for someone to take him down, for example, hitting Munju with a car while she was jogging in the morning. In that case, he would have no heart to do anything else. That's why he had someone follow Munju at all times. And, before her husband became a presidential candidate, Munju had an impressive resume. She had served as a UN ambassador and a South Korean diplomat to the United States. But to focus on accompanying her husband during the election campaign, she resigned from all her positions. The scene shifts. South Korean President Choi Kyung-shin wants to talk to Munju alone. Choi Kyung-shin highly appreciates Munju. Years ago, when she saw Munju get countries like the United States and North Korea to agree to include the word peace in the Basel Quadrilateral Agreement, she had been silently thinking to herself, if I can be elected president, I must appoint the capable Munju as Minister of Foreign Affairs. She never expected that Munju would actually resign now. However, Choi Kyung-shin's stance differs from that of Munju's husband, Jun Il. Jun Il's views are too unrealistic. He advocates promoting independent peace on the Korean peninsula, but Choi Kyung-shin believes that North Korea could collapse at any time, and Jun Il's bold proposition is likely to bring him mortal danger. But regardless of what happens, Munju is determined to support her husband. Jun Il is also very grateful that she has returned to his side, so before heading to the event venue, he put a carefully selected necklace on his wife. Then he got dressed and prepared to go to the church to pray. On the way, the assistant showed Jun Il and Munju the church seating chart, and also pointed out the seats for the couple and the bodyguards. However, Jun Il said that it was enough for the bodyguards to stand outside the church. What he was going to hold was a peace mass ceremony, to convey the belief in peace. If bodyguards were inside, it would make the church look solemn. The assistant thought this matter seemed a bit unreliable, but Jun Il insisted on his opinion, and also asked the assistant to buy peaches for Munju in the evening. After a while, they were about to reach their destination, but there was a huge crowd outside the church. These people were worried that their interests would be harmed, shouting loudly that they opposed peaceful reunification, and even angrily calling Jun Il a traitor. Amid the jeers and insults, Jun Il and Munju entered the church. At this moment, a man on the second floor had set up a camera and focused the lens on Munju. Munju seemed to sense something, so she turned around and looked towards his position. On the other side, Jun Il was still asking his assistant to let the bodyguards leave, and hoped the assistant would find a safe place for Munju, so that Munju could go to rest after finishing her prayer. After all preparations were in place, the ceremony officially began. Jun Il worried that something might go wrong in some part of the process, so he stared intently at the event schedule. Munju noticed that something was wrong with him, and asked her husband what was the matter. Jun Il replied that nothing was wrong, then continued with the next part of the process. He was supposed to go on stage to speak, but before he could say a word, a man in camouflage clothing walked up to him and demanded, "Why did you betray us?" Unexpectedly, Jun Il died in the same way as he did in his dream. The scene descended into chaos in an instant. Munju rushed forward and covered her husband's wand with her hands. Just at this moment, the assistant rushed forward to subdue the killer, but unexpectedly, he was shot dead before he could get close. The killer then prepared to step forward and finish Jun Il off with another shot. He needed to make sure Jun Il was dead. Frightened, Munju quickly shielded her husband and asked the killer, "Reunification is hell, isn't it?" She would persuade her husband to give up his previous idea. Everything can be discussed, The killer hesitated upon hearing this, but after thinking about it, he still decided to kill June Il. Suddenly, however, camera flashes went off from behind, and then a large number of bodyguards rushed in, but they were practically a joke. They charged forward without even drawing their guns. The one at the front was killed on the spot. Fortunately, though, there were enough bodyguards, and the killer couldn't finish them off right away. Taking this opportunity, June Il reluctantly took off his wife's necklace, and gathered his last strength to lean close to her ear, saying regretfully, "We won't be able to eat peaches together." As soon as he finished speaking, the killer charged towards Munju again. It seemed that Munju was going to meet her end here today. The photographer acted quickly, snatching the pistol and subduing the killer. Munju was still in shock and hadn't recovered from the daze. Suddenly, her husband in her arms closed his eyes. She anxiously shouted, urging him to wake up, but it was all in vain. At this moment, seeing his mission accomplished, the killer took out a pill and ended his own life. Shortly after, June Il was rushed to the hospital for treatment. His mother Lim Ok-sun, the chairman of Aso Shipping, and his grandmother rushed to the hospital as soon as they heard the news. As South Korea's largest shipping and logistics company, Aso Shipping's strength speaks for itself. But now, no amount of money or power matters. None of these can guarantee that June Il will survive the operating table. While June Il was being treated in the emergency operating room, the police investigated the killer's information and found that he was only 27 years old and an active duty soldier. Before long, the door of the emergency room finally opened. The doctor walked quickly to the family members and said that June Il's injuries were too severe, and there was nothing they could do. Upon hearing this news, Munju collapsed to the ground on the spot. She helplessly reached for the necklace her husband had given her, only to find her neck empty. The box of peaches in her hand made her grief even more overwhelming. With June Il dead, the political arena was in chaos. In the evening, the family sat together for dinner. The grandmother sighed that her fate was truly miserable. Her husband and son were both dead, and now even her grandson was gone. The agony of a white-haired person sending off a black-haired one was unbearable. But as she spoke, the tone took a turn for the worse. She complained that when her son died, his wife didn't die with him. After saying that, she looked at her granddaughter-in-law, blaming her for not leaving a single child in their family, yet being able to inherit all of June Il's property. Back then, to prevent her from inheriting her husband's inheritance, the grandmother had bypassed her entirely, and left all the inheritance to her eldest son, June Il, never expecting June Il to be killed, and all the money ended up in Munju's hands. The situation was already chaotic enough as it was, when suddenly Lim Ok-sun's second son June Sang spoke up, saying he wanted to run for president in his brother's place. He even claimed that according to poll results, his chances of being elected were very high. Lim Ok-sun asked June Sang what basis there was for this so-called poll, and he replied that party chairman Hwang Man-ji had told him. Lim Ok-sun was furious, unable to understand why June Sang had no sense at all. She angrily said that with June Il dead, many people were secretly laughing behind their backs, and Hwang Man-ji was one of them. Then she told June Sang to just be a prosecutor. Obediently, if he really became president, he would be manipulated and destroyed by others. Moreover, Lim Ok-sun believed that if someone really had to take June Il's place to run for president, that person must be Munju. Upon hearing this, the grandmother questioned if she was crazy. Lim Ok-sun stated that in elections in the United States, widows have never lost when running for office. Their family had spent too much effort promoting June Il. This election must be a success. June Sang, standing aside, felt upset upon hearing this. Just at this moment, the family lawyer hurried over and said that June Il knew an accident could happen to him at any time, since he had become a candidate. So he had already consulted the lawyer and made a will 2 weeks ago. The will clearly stated that the 4.41055 billion won in cash under his name, 5 pieces of real estate worth 28 billion won, and tangible assets worth 5.5 billion won, all of these were to be given to Munju. The grandmother was really speechless, and told the lawyer to stop talking about these things, and just say what else, apart from what was given to Munju, was left for the family. The lawyer said he had not yet received the details of June Il's overseas asset distribution. At this point, June Sang couldn't hold back anymore, and questioned whether the lawyer's documents were forged. Confused about how his brother could leave all the money to an outsider, the lawyer said the will had already been verified and was all legally valid. The grandmother was extremely angry, and complained that their family had started out selling salt, and after working hard for 3 generations to accumulate their wealth, it had become an outsider's now. Lim Ok-sun also found it unbelievable, and asked Munju what was really going on. Munju said she was also surprised.
저런 거지 같은 애하고 결혼시키면 안 된다고.
Lim Ok-sun, having been scolded by the grandmother again, could only turn her anger on her daughter-in-law. She thought Munju was pretending to be unaware, and even suspected that Munju had hired someone to kill June Il. Upon hearing this, Munju was deeply hurt, and said she now understood why June Il had left all his money to her. Ever since she married into the family, she had been mocked as a beggar every day. but she was also a child who had been carefully raised and cherished by her parents, and didn't deserve to be looked down upon by others. Jun-il must have thought the same way, which was why he left all his inheritance to her. The grandmother felt she was indeed in the wrong, so she started picking on Munju's attitude, and even complained that Munju hadn't shed a single tear at the funeral. Lim Ok-sun also opposed the will her son had left behind, saying that she had not had an easy time these years either, yet she still worked hard to earn money for the family and raised Jun-il with great care. But now everything had become someone else's. It was all so unfair. Munju saw through their true colors, and said she didn't want any of the money. She would donate it all and then leave South Korea. When they heard she was going to donate all the money, Jun-sang shouted that they would file a lawsuit, apply for an injunction to freeze all the assets, and demand that what was rightfully theirs be returned to them. Lim Ok-sun also said she would find the best team of lawyers to sue Munju.
하고 싶은 대로 하세요. 두렵지 않습니다.
As she spoke, Munju told everyone to leave her house. The grandmother asked the lawyer if the house was also hers. The lawyer replied that it was indeed hers. Everyone looked at Munju in unison. Munju said they didn't have to worry, she was just joking, then left without looking back. Jun-sang hurried after her and said, instead of donating all the money, why not support his election campaign? However, Munju had no intention of cooperating with him. On the other side, Baek Sanho, the photographer, picked up Munju's necklace, noticing a part of it was broken. He even found tools to fix it. Suddenly, someone called him and said there was a task to assign to him. Baek Sanho said he had long stopped doing that kind of work, and now only wanted to live an ordinary and stable life. The other person said the reward for this task was very high, and the client had specifically requested him to protect Munju in the days to come. Baek Sanho asked if the client was Munju herself. The other person replied that it was not. The client had a rather strange request. Baek Sanho should find an opportunity to get close to Munju, and have her hire him as a bodyguard, thereby hiding the client's existence. After that, he was to report Munju's situation to the client at any time, and every detail must be included. At the same time, Munju was also investigating information about the killer in Baek Sanho. There was nothing special about the killer. He simply opposed Jun-il's views and thus had the intention to kill him. But the information describing Baek Sanho was all vague. In the evening, Munju went out for a jog. Thinking about everything that had happened during the day, she couldn't help but secretly wipe away her tears. She had thought no one would see her vulnerable side. Little did she know that Baek Sanho had been watching her secretly. However, in the days that followed, Munju continued to exercise, study, and live her life well as usual. She was a very strong person, so Baek Sanho had no intention of taking on the task. As he spoke, he looked out the window and saw Munju coming to the church, gazing at the statue, her eyes filled with tears. When the priest saw her arrival, he stepped forward to greet her. Munju voiced the doubt in her heart. Both she and Jun-il had thought the church was God's dwelling place, a place blessed by God and extremely safe, which was why Jun-il had no bodyguards around him when he was killed. But why would God turn a blind eye to everything and let her husband be shot and killed? Did this mean that God didn't exist? The priest didn't refute her directly. Instead, he said mysteriously that a storm was approaching, and before long, Munju would have a question to ask God. When that time came, she should come to him again.
문주님의 영혼을 위해 기도하고 있겠습니다.
Munju didn't continue to press for answers, and only said that she wanted to meet Baek Sanho. The scene shifts. Munju goes out for a jog as usual. Unexpectedly, she sees Baek Sanho when passing a bus stop. The other person takes out the repaired necklace and hands it to her, and also says that Munju is being followed, and as he speaks, he intends to take Munju to another place to talk. However, the people following them from behind actually catch up. Baek Sanho tells Munju to keep moving forward, then grapples with the pursuers. After easily resolving the trouble, Baek Sanho takes Munju by the hand and heads up the mountain, because the number of pursuers behind them has increased from a few to dozens. At this moment, Munju finds it hard to see the mountain path, so she turns on the flashlight on her phone for light. Baek Sanho hurries to take the phone and turns off the flashlight, and also tells Munju to close her eyes and open them again after a few seconds. Miraculously, when Munju opens her eyes again, the entire mountain path is lit up.
서울은 밝은 도시죠. 저 사람들은 우리 못 잡습니다.
Munju followed Baek Sanho's gaze and looked down the mountain, only to find the area was filled with the light of flashlights, so she hurriedly kept up with Baek Sanho's steps. After walking for a while, Munju asked Baek Sanho a question, wondering what the killer had said before his death.
나는 간첩을 죽였다.
Then Baek Sanho voiced his opinion. There was someone giving orders behind the killer. As soon as he finished speaking, a downpour began to pour from the sky. The two set up a temporary shelter from the rain. Baek Sanho took out the video footage from the day of the incident. In the video, it can be clearly seen that the killer stuffed something into the desk compartment before taking action. Later, when Baek Sanho checked, he found it was a book with a card tucked inside, so he dialed the number on the card, only to find it was a disconnected number. However, not long after he left the public phone booth, someone came looking for him. Baek Sanho realized there was something fishy going on, and investigated the phone number. In the end, he concluded that the owner of the card had a certain amount of power to make a phone number become invalid. Then Baek Sanho played another video from the day of the incident, the surveillance footage outside the church, which revealed that the killer had met Jun Sang. The scene shifts. Munju went to Jun Il-'s office, wanting to find out why Jun Il had suddenly increased the number of bodyguards 2 months ago, only to be told that once, not long after Jun Il had gone out, he asked the driver to turn around and go back, claiming that there was a squirrel following them. When she heard about the squirrel, Munju ran home in a panic. She had heard her husband mention that Jun Sang had been bitten by a squirrel when he was a child. After that, Jun Il had liked to associate him with squirrels, and even specially drew a portrait of a squirrel. Munju searched through the photo album, and found that there were also words on the portrait pointing out that Jun Sang was the squirrel. Just at this moment, Munju's assistant called, saying that the killer's family had suddenly started moving. But everyone's face was filled with worry and tension, and the men in black helping with the move seemed not ordinary. She planned to follow them to see what was going on. Upon hearing this, Munju was afraid of danger and told the assistant not to follow. But the assistant said nothing would happen. Munju hurried to head over there. Not long after, the killer's family was taken to the airport. The men in black bought several plane tickets to Australia. The assistant was busy eavesdropping when the men in black came right up behind her. By the time Munju arrived at the airport, the people had already been taken away. Jun Sang timed his call perfectly, and said that the assistant was in his hands. Munju had to go to Jun Sang's residence, wanting to know why Jun Il had to die. The other party said that the police had already stated that Jun Il was killed by an anti-reunification lunatic. Munju then asked Jun Sang why he had been following Jun Il. The other party put on an innocent act, saying that he was a prosecutor from South Korea's special investigation team, and that he had been following Jun Il because Jun Il was a North Korean spy. This matter was also related to the United States. If a spy were elected president, the world would really be thrown into chaos. As for Baek Sanho, he was a top mercenary from a U.S. private military contractor, who would even kill innocent people without mercy for money. It just so happened that he was at the scene when the incident occurred, so it was obvious whether Baek Sanho was good or bad. Then Jun Sang tried to elevate his words, saying that he was determined to be elected president for the sake of his beloved family and country. These words sounded quite plausible, but Munju didn't believe Jun Sang. She firmly stated that Jun Il couldn't be a spy no matter what. Seeing that she didn't fall for his tricks, Jun Sang decided to resort to coercion, and demanded that Munju and the assistant leave the country, otherwise, the assistant would definitely suffer a lot. In the evening, Munju went to the church to find the priest, only to see that the priest's office was in a mess.
신부님.
Baek Sanho told her not to scream under any circumstances, then told Munju that the priest was already dead. Munju wanted to call the police immediately, but Baek Sanho said that the top priority was to escape, because someone was coming here to look for something. As soon as he finished speaking, a man in black appeared from behind. Baek Sanho quickly took the initiative and, with his excellent skills, subdued the man. He questioned the man in black about what exactly he was looking for, but the sound of the fight alarmed the other people in the church. They frantically twisted the doorknob, asking what was wrong. Baek Sanho was distracted because of this. The man in black took the opportunity to break free from his restraints and escape. Baek Sanho had to go back to help close the priest's eyes. Then he opened the hidden door inside the wardrobe to leave. Munju followed him as well. On the other side, Lim Ok-sun had helped an official before. This time, something happened to her son, so she begged the official to tell her what the situation really was. The official said that Jun Il was most likely a spy. Lim Ok-sun didn't believe it and then asked if it was the president who was framing Jun Il. The official didn't say anything, and only took out a piece of information about Baek Sanho, telling Lim Ok-sun to be careful of this man. At this moment, Munju followed Baek Sanho to the underground area. She curiously asked about the matter of him being a mercenary. Baek Sanho said that his contract had ended a year ago, so now he was just an ordinary person. Munju then asked again why he was at the scene both when Jun Il and the priest were killed. This question was a sign of suspecting that he was involved, but Baek Sanho understood that if Munju really didn't trust him, she wouldn't have followed him to the underground area. He told Munju that the reason the man in black killed the priest was that the priest was going to announce something the next day. Originally, this was something that Jun Il was going to announce after the mass, but what exactly was it? At this moment, Baek Sanho found a bottle of wine while rummaging in the wine cellar. This bottle of wine was the one that the priest had said he would keep for him to drink, realizing that there was a secret hidden inside it. Baek Sanho poured out all the wine, and sure enough, there was something hidden inside. After checking, he found that it was a few pictures and a piece of text. The content stated that according to satellite images from the Defense Intelligence Agency, a 10,000-ton nuclear submarine had appeared near North Korea's Yongpyong shipyard. This weapon had great destructive power. The U.S. military was anxious and wanted to take the first move to destroy all of North Korea's military nuclear facilities. If the conflict escalated completely, It might even turn the entire East Asian region into a brutal battlefield. A Korean American working in the US government didn't want to see such a situation, so he tried to persuade everyone, emphasizing that North Korea clearly lacked sufficient technology and funds, and had no reason to do such a thing. But no one paid attention to him, so the man had to seek help from Jun Il. Afraid that electronic devices would be monitored, the man had to hide the information in a pen holder to pass it on, hoping that Jun Il could prevent the outbreak of war. Now that they knew the truth of the matter, Baek Sanho said that he had family members in North Korea. He needed to go to North Korea. After hearing this, Munju told him to go with peace of mind, and that she would take care of the matter regarding the letter. Later, Munju prepared to seek help from Chai Kyungshin. Fortunately, everything went fairly smoothly. After reading the letter, Chai Kyungshin set the letter on fire and burned it, saying that her idea was the same as Jun Il's, both wanting to prevent the war. But the two crazy countries were about to go to war, and both were waiting for the other to back down first. Even if South Korea stood in the middle shouting loudly for them not to fight, they wouldn't listen at all. So Chai Kyungshin wanted to start with one side. As long as one side stopped, the other side wouldn't think about continuing the fight either. Then Chai Kyungshin criticized Munju for being too honest, not understanding that the way countries get along with each other is all about mutual deception and intrigue.
자기 남편 죽음은 정치적으로, 외교적으로 처리돼야 해.
Upon hearing this, Munju was extremely shocked and confronted her, asking if she knew who had killed Jun Il, yet had chosen to hide all of this. Chai Kyungshin said that Jun Il's death was an opportunity, and if used well, it would give them a voice with the United States. As she spoke, she ordered Munju to leave the country immediately, and that she would find a way to prevent a war from breaking out on the Korean peninsula. At this moment, a desire for power ignited in Munju's heart. She wanted to find out the real reason for her husband's death, and also complete the unfinished business he had left behind. So she went to find Lim Ok-sun. She knew that her husband had been able to enter politics, and even become a presidential candidate at a young age, all thanks to her mother-in-law, who had spent a lot of money and used her connections. Now Jun Il was gone just like that. Lim Ok-sun must be unwilling to accept this, so Munju hoped that Lim Ok-sun would help her become a presidential candidate, and in return, she was willing to offer all her assets. Soon, the two women formed a united front. Munju asked her mother-in-law to call Jun Sang, and tell him to release the assistant, then announce his withdrawal from the election and leave the country. On the other side, Baek Sanho first went to China, and spent money to hire someone to take him across the river to North Korea. But as soon as they approached the riverbank, they witnessed an extremely terrifying scene. Listening to the cries of the children on the boat, Baek Sanho was filled with mixed emotions, and finally called the person who had assigned him the task, telling them to inform the client that he was willing to protect Munju. At the same time, Munju found her trusted teacher, and said that she wanted to continue down the path Jun Il had not finished, but the teacher no longer wanted to get involved in these matters, because he was leaving for Argentina soon. He said guiltily that it was he who had introduced Jun Il to the priest, and both of them advocated peaceful reunification, so they had a lot of common topics to talk about, and in the end, both the priest and Jun Il had died a tragic death because of this.
이 나라 사람들은 평화보다는 증오를 사랑하고 파벌과 분열을 사랑해.
The teacher was disappointed and didn't want to stay in South Korea any longer. Upon hearing this, Munju was very anxious, and said that she was going to run for president, and that she still had many things to ask the teacher for advice on. However, the teacher saw things very clearly. North Korea has nuclear weapons, and the United States will definitely intervene. This war will break out sooner or later. But Munju spoke sincerely, saying that if she could be elected president, she would do her utmost to prevent it. Meanwhile, Lim Ok-sun also started to make her move. Munju quickly dominated the South Korean news search rankings. For a time, many people thought that Munju should be elected as the next president. Then Lim Ok-sun found Hwang Man-ji-ai, and said that her husband had left some files before his death, which contained various leverage against Hwang Man-ji-ai. As she spoke, she took out a photo of a young girl. The other party panicked instantly, shouting that many officials had illegitimate children before entering politics, but no amount of quibbling would help. Hwang Man-ji-ai didn't want to lose his position, so he asked Lim Ok-sun what she really wanted. The other party stated that Jun Sang would withdraw from the election and leave for South Korea, and that Munju would run for the election. She told Hwang Man-ji-ai not to stand in the way. On the other side, to get rid of the trouble caused by Jun Sang, Munju took the documents and went to see him, stating that in California in September 2015, a woman had drunk and driven, causing serious casualties, but the police had finally arrested someone else, and that person was none other than Jun Sang. Upon hearing this, Jun Sang had an indifferent look on his face, and said that he was also a victim of the car accident. He had kindly given a ride to a woman who had been harassed, and the woman had suddenly gone crazy and tried to grab the steering wheel. Hearing him say this, Munju immediately presented the evidence. Jun Sang was stunned for a moment, but still refused to admit it. Munju then took out the video of him committing domestic violence. Jun Sang's eyes turned scarlet as he realized that his mother had decided to support Munju. In the evening, Lim Ok-sun hosted a banquet for many officials. Then everyone did their best to promote Munju as a legendary figure. This momentum was very good, but the United States could no longer sit idle, which meant that Munju was most likely in danger. At the same time, Baek Sanho signed the document for protecting Munju, and obtained a lot of weapons as well as information on people who posed a threat. Then Baek Sanho watched videos of Munju when she was a diplomat. At that time, Munju had said a sentence. She believed that the people of North Korea had the right to live a good life. On the other side, Munju was woken up by a call from Chai Kyung-shin. The other party's words were full of confusion, thinking that Munju had really taken her by surprise. But during her term as president, Chai Kyung-shin would prevent the war from breaking out. If Munju dared to oppose her, she would take more ruthless measures. But Munju had no intention of opposing Chai Kyung-shin. Her goal was also to prevent the war. It was just that she thought Chai Kyung-shin couldn't do it, so she wanted to do it herself, especially when it came to Chai Kyung-shin wanting to exploit Jun Il-'s death to curry favor with the United States.
진실에 기반하지 않는 외교는 결국 실패하고요.
Upon hearing this, Chai Kyung-shin's tone was filled with worry. She questioned how Munju could be elected president without the support of the United States. The scene shifts. Munju was preparing to announce her official candidacy, and Baek Sanho, in order to protect her, had specially set up a sniper rifle on the tall building opposite. At first, everything was normal. Suddenly, a colleague sent him a message. After verification, besides the killer they had previously identified, there was also a Korean bomb technician at the scene. This meant that the enemy might not carry out a direct shooting, but instead use a bomb to achieve their goal. The most likely place for the bomb to be installed was the train heading to Seoul. Baek Sanho was so frightened that he hurried to tell Munju to get off the train, but she didn't hear clearly and sat down in her seat. Baek Sanho had to change his words and tell her not to stand up, adding that the person who had been repairing the seats just now was suspicious. Realizing that something was wrong, the live broadcast at the scene had to be paused first. The assistant contacted the train staff, who said they had not sent anyone to repair the seats. At this moment, Baek Sanho revealed that there might be a bomb under Munju's seat. He told Munju not to move, and that he would go to the next station to board the train. Upon hearing that there was a bomb under the seat, Munju asked her assistant to move everyone else to another carriage. The waiting time that followed felt like every second was an eternity, especially when they reached the next station. Munju didn't see Baek Sanho's figure. She had thought he wouldn't make it in time, but unexpectedly, Baek Sanho had already appeared behind her. Then he took out a knife, cut open the seat, and found that there was indeed a bomb inside. And there was even another one under the seat in front. Just at this moment, the police hurried over. Baek Sanho told them to cut off the power and evacuate the crowd, then asked when the bomb disposal team would arrive. The police said it would take more than 10 minutes. After that, the police immediately went out to evacuate the crowd. Soon, there were only 6 minutes left before the bomb exploded, so Baek Sanho asked to switch seats with Munju. After a series of actions, Munju successfully escaped danger, but after getting off the train, she didn't leave. Instead, she looked worriedly at Baek Sanho in the carriage, as the countdown was about to end. After everything returned to calm, Munju stared at the empty carriage and was stunned. Fortunately, though, Baek Sanho was out of danger. Later, the doctor treated Baek Sanho's wounds, while Munju continued to head to Seoul to give a speech. Soon, Munju stepped onto the podium to speak, but Lim Ok-sun detected something was wrong, because Munju was not following the speech script she had prepared. Little did she know that sincerity is always the ultimate trump card. Even Hwang Manji was deeply moved by her after she finished her speech. Baek Sanho, who had set up a sniper rifle on a distant tall building, was even more deeply touched. Late at night, Munju came to the church. Baek Sanho stepped forward immediately. Munju asked him why he could always appear at critical moments. He said that Jun Il and the priest were dead, but the mastermind behind it all had been hiding in the darkness, and would target other people who support peaceful reunification. So Baek Sanho proposed that Munju hire him. Munju thought for a moment and agreed. The scene shifts to the nuclear submarine. Where will this missile fly to? The content of the first 3 episodes of Tempest ends here. Can Munju, played by Jung Ji-hyun, successfully be elected in the end? Who on earth is the person who requested Baek Sanho to secretly protect her? How should the Korean Peninsula crisis be resolved? All these questions will have to wait until later to be revealed. Let's wait and see. Today's commentary ends here. If you like my commentary, please subscribe to my channel. Your support is the greatest encouragement for me. See you in the next episode.